Grips. Let's go through an intro on grips. A great expression is get a grip. Well, we need to get a grip on grips. Grips can be very confusing to the newcomer to tennis. It sounds like the airlines. You've got Eastern, Western, Continental. Every racket, whether it's an old racket, new racket, expensive, inexpensive, adult size, junior size, the rackets have the same grip as far as the 8 bevels, having the shape of an octagon. For me, it was always difficult when someone said, well, this is where the V is, this is where the U is. In other words, the relationship of the index finger and the thumb based on the panels of the racket. The number system, if you just start with the top panel being number 1, right-hander's going to the right, 2, 3, 4, 5, just go right around, clock face, counterclock face, doesn't matter, there's 8 bevels to the racket. Then you take the 2 reference points, the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad. Those 2 reference points form a straight line, and then you put them accordingly on the number system. So right now I'm going to place the base knuckle and heel pad on number 3. In mass teaching, you're out there, you're teaching 20 plus people, I can understand a coach to say, okay, this is how we're going to find the forehand grip, the shake hands grip. But you have to be very, very careful because when players bring their racket down in this position, they have the racket face slightly open. Write this down. The grip determines the angle of the racket face. The grip determines the angle of the racket face. Now, every coach should carry a clipboard. And if you wanted to just test your students, right now my base knuckle is on number 2. The racket face is open 45 degrees. Now my base knuckle is on number 3 and the racket face is vertical. It's parallel to the net. If I change to 4, it closes at 45 degrees. If I change all the way to 5, it closes 90 degrees. So when it comes down to scouting and looking across the net, you should be able to tell very quickly, and this is what your students need to be able to do, is what grips your opponent uses. And every grip is going to have a strength and a weakness. Every grip has advantages, disadvantages. Other key lines to remember, there's no such thing as a perfect grip. What you want to do is have the grip with the least amount of adjustment. Every grip is different. Every grip is individual because the strength of one's grip, also the length and width of the finger span. The gypsies can read your palm, palmistry. Everybody's hand folds slightly differently. Now, a few more general comments on grips. Take the bottom part of your hand and have it be even with the bottom part of your racket. Sure, it's a power source to have the racket become a longer lever by having your hand off the racket. But again, introducing players to the grip, or grips, bottom part of the hand, even with bottom part of the racket. We go as far as even taking a rubber band and putting it right on top of the butt cap, just like a young kid in Little League Baseball choking up on their bat. Hang onto the grip softly. It's finger, 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 thumb, finger. You spread your fingers like you're going to go catch a ball. You wouldn't catch a ball with your fingers together. All your fingers together will make a tight hammer grip. But again, it's not wrong. Pancho Gonzalez played with a hammer grip. A great finesse player as well. Now, just to take the number system and tell you what shot you use with a number system. There's 3 basic stroke patterns. So the throwing motion for the serve and for the overhead, you're going to use number 2, called a continental grip. We may even call it at times a spin grip, a serve grip. The base knuckle and the heel pad are on the second panel, so your hand is going to be at an angle in this position. All right, now for forehand ground strokes, we introduce players to hit with a forehand grip. Keep in mind, young kids, we'll teach them to hit a 2-handed forehand. And we'll go through the rationale on why. And it's advantageous for a player in many ways to just tilt the racket face slightly down to the bottom part of the 3rd panel. And it's very interesting to study the history of players and know what grip changes they've made. So many players have changed from a full Western to an extreme Eastern. And the reason they've done that is they actually hit too much spin. The reason they hit a full Western to begin with is that's a grip that's conducive to a high bouncing ball. So the serve is the second panel, forehand ground stroke, forehand volley, have your hand on the 3rd panel. Now right away people say, oh, there's no way that you volley with a forehand grip on the volley? Well, it all depends what age group you're talking about. But keep in mind, the best players inspire. They don't necessarily inform. Players are players. And what the top players are doing is that something we should actually teach the younger players to do. But what's very interesting is the top players, for the most part, volley with a composite grip. A composite grip is a combination of two grips. Keep in mind, if you have a continental grip on the volley, the racket face is open at a 45-degree angle. And I'll come back and talk more about that. That's a question that I'm asked still on a regular basis. I've been always asked about the grips on volleys. But just the grip system. Number 2 is a continental grip. Number 2 is a serve grip. Number 3 is going to be the forehand grip. The backhand grip will be the base knuckle on the right side of number 1. Two-handed grip, a two-handed backhand is a left-handed forehand. So you use a forehand grip with your left hand. So what you want to be able to do is basically for your students simplify. The serve, grip number 2. But keep in mind, tennis teaching is an art. Welby Van Horn, he used to teach players to serve in this position first. And he'd have them to have great balance, a very low toss. And then from there, he'd go back and say, okay, now let me show you how to serve, because they had knocked off so many other components in trying to learn to serve. So when it comes down to grips, the grips will be a factor on the ready position. The grip is a factor on every aspect of the strokes. But just so you know, the number system is in the mathematical equation I've given you. If you turn the racket 8 times, it's 360 degrees. You take 360 divided by 8. Every time you change the panel by 1 position, you change the racket 45 degrees. So number 2 is going to be for serves and overheads. When you're introducing tennis to players, you're going to start with number 3 on the forehand. Backhand side will be number 1. And the two-handed backhand will be right side of number 1 as well. And then also the left hand is on number 3. So we'll come back to grips. But it's very, very important. Think about golf, for example. Grip, swing, and body. Golfers are so motivated by stroke production, but that's their scoring system. If you ask a golfer on the 3rd hole how they did on the 5th shot, or on the 5th hole how they did on the 3rd shot, they're going to be able to tell you. The scoring system allows them to go back and say, well, I hit the ball 75 times, and if I go 1st hole, 2nd hole, I know how I hit the ball. You talk to a golfer about grips, they're going to be listening to you. A lot of times tennis players, and this has always been shocking to me, is they don't think the grips are that important. But let me just end by saying the grips are very, very important.